About 10 years ago, I took up ceramics as a hobby. So over the years, I've been asked quite a few times to do videos of kind of some of the stuff that I do because I've given away a number of things, and when people get them, they're like, hey, how do you do this? I really want to learn something about it. So I'm not a professional by any means, but I'm an experienced amateur, and it's something I like to do. So I'm going to do a series of videos. This first one is just going to talk about the tools. So I'm not really going to get into the using the clay or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about some of the simple tools that anybody could afford. I think it's a pretty cheap hobby to get into. The critical part being, do you have somewhere to fire the ceramic? So either you own a kiln or there's a business somewhere in your vicinity where you can take things to get them fired. I'll explain a little bit more about firing in either later in this video or in the future. So today we're just going to talk about some of the tools. I have most of them laid out here. I'm going to show you one more tool after we're done with this and kind of talk about that a little bit more. But here, the basic things that I have are some little things for shaping the clay. I use a wheel predominantly, so as I want to cut into the clay or trim pieces off of the clay, I have some little sticks for that. I have a little caliber meter here that I can adjust and make sizes for things. This is especially helpful if you're doing containers with lids and you want to be able to replicate the size of something, so those are real popular. I have what I would call a banding wheel. This is the first one that I bought. Very inexpensive, probably just a few bucks. This comes in real handy if you're doing some little trimming on your clay and you just want to move it around, or if you're doing your glazing. So you've got your bowl or your pot on this and you're glazing it and turning it as you go. In future videos, you'll kind of see how I use these things. This is a little more expensive, a better version of this. So this one's probably just a few bucks. This one's maybe 25 or 30 bucks. Got ball bearings. You can see it's a lot better. So I could get glaze on my brush and just turn this thing, and makes it a lot easier to do some glazing. If you were doing some slabs, like say you wanted to build a little box or something like that, I use a dowel for that. And these sticks here are just to gauge the thickness of the clay. So I can lay my sticks down, put a piece of clay between them, and roll this to get the clay down to a certain thickness. I have thinner ones that I can use. I even have a set of drumsticks that I can use if I want something really thick, or if I just want to, play a little bit of drums. I've got that going on. Some of the other things that you use mostly on the wheel is little things like this, where you can use it for smoothing or really shaping your clay. Same thing with this sort of thing. Kind of shapes, you can see curve shapes, flat shapes. Same thing with these. So you might want a couple of cheap tools. These are all just a few bucks a piece, or you can make your own. Same with this thing here. It's just another shaping tool. Sponges, again, cheap things. Sponges are nice to have when you're working on the wheel, or if you're just trying to clean things up that you've made. This is just a sponge that I've stapled to a stick. Say I throw a bowl or a mug, I can use this to get inside that and get the water out of it, right? Or I could even use it for shaping the inside of that mug. These tools here I use for trimming, like after I've already thrown a mug or a bowl, and then I want to refine the shape. Say the next day or next couple of days, that clay is going to solidify a little bit. I can put it back on the wheel, and then I can fine tune the shape. You can buy tools like this. I made these out of a saw blade. So I just took them, heated them up, put them in the vise, bent them to the angle that I want, and then just took my grinder and ground off a sharp edge on them. That way I can use these to put the clay on the wheel, turn the piece, and then I can use these to trim the clay into shapes that I want. Again, you'll see more of that later, but just want to show some of the things that I have. So all of this that I've shown you so far, you're just looking at a few bucks, unless you know, buy something like this. But very, very inexpensive hacksaw blades, right? These are some tools that I bought for trimming. So when these won't work, say I want specific shapes, like a really, I want to make like deep gouges or really flat spots or whatever, you can buy these tools. You can buy sets of them. They're not super expensive. Again, you can look for cheap ones, probably 15 bucks for the whole set. And I've even got more. I'm just showing you a few of them, but you can see, you can buy shapes on these tools on Amazon or whatever, pretty cheap, and you don't have to buy real expensive ones. I have a little file that I use, and I've got other files. Say after a while, clay can dull your tools, so you can use these to sharpen the tool up, and it makes it, you know, cut into that clay better. So have some files around. I bought a cheap set of brushes. I use these for glazing. These aren't very expensive. Got all different sizes, so if you want to do fine stuff, this is probably a $15 or $20 set. So again, not a lot of money involved there. This is something else that I use for glazing. Again, just a few bucks. You can say you've already glazed the piece and you want to put some detailed glazing on. Well, you can put some glaze in this, and you can do like drips around the side of your bowls or cups, and then when you fire them, you'll have like little drip type things going around. So I like to use these things here. So this here is this is a store-bought one, but it's just basically a wire with a couple pieces of with a couple sticks at the end. I've got one here that I made. This is just made out of fishing string for cutting your clay. So if you have your clay, you can just take it and pull this right through it. Gives you a way to cut off pieces that you want. Again, this one's free. That one's maybe a few bucks. Then where you might get a little bit more money is in your glazes. So glazes like this here, you could spend maybe 12 to 15 bucks for a pint, but you can do, I don't know, probably 10, 15 or more bowls with something like this. There's lots of companies that make these. This particular one's made by Coyote. Duncan makes a lot of different glazes. And then this one here is Amico. I might even have a couple other brands around here, but lots of different brands of glazes. The other thing that you'll need is you'll need to get some clay at some point. So I'll talk a little bit about the clay today. This is a real popular, this is what's called a B mix. If you look online, you'll see what a B mix is. It's just a particular mix of clay. It's pretty fine, so there's not like a lot of grit or what they call grog in this clay. So if you're a beginner, B mix is probably not the best thing for you, because it's pretty light and it can get away from you on the wheel and maybe take on some shapes that you're not looking for. If you're just starting out, like you're going to do wheel throwing, you want something that's got some grog in it. And what grog is it's clay that's already been fired, and then they grind it up and put it back into the clay mix, and it helps with the binding and makes it a little more firm, a little more easier to handle. I have some other clay here. So this clay, when it fires, turns out very white. Not quite as white as porcelain, but pretty white. And then I have some other clay that I use a lot here. It's called Black Mountain. So this clay here is a lot more sandy, a lot more earthy. In one of my next videos, I'm gonna show just like a random selection of some of the stuff that I've done, and you'll see some of the things that I've done with this clay. I actually like this quite a bit. It's also pretty easy to throw. That pretty much covers the tools that I wanted to talk about here. Now I want to show you something else that I use a lot and is sort of the main feature of the work that I do. So the next tool I want to talk about is a pottery wheel. About 4 years ago or so, my wife bought me this wheel for Christmas. And she bought me a really nice one. Probably a lot more than I would have paid for one. But it's a wheel that'll last me the rest of my life. Probably hand it down to any of the kids that might want it. It's very high quality. This is by a company called Scut. This is a half horsepower wheel. And when you're thinking about horsepower, this wheel is actually rated, you could throw 100 pounds of clay on this thing if you wanted to. The most I've ever done personally is maybe about 6 pounds. So this wheel's got plenty of power to do anything you would ever want to do. They sell wheels that have a full horsepower. So I think if you're a professional, something you're going to use every single day, you're doing a lot of big stuff, whatever, you probably want to get more horsepower, but this is like more than adequate for anything I would ever do. Pretty expensive. You could probably find a decent wheel used, maybe for a few $100. If you were to buy a wheel, don't buy a toy unless it's for a child. So if you're going to spend $20 on a wheel, then it's not something that you're going to use yourself. You might give it to your 6-year-old for them to play around with, but I think you're going to spend a few $100 if you want to get something decent. These here, brand new, are $1,200–1,300, but I use it a lot. I've used it hours and hours and hours, so I feel like I'm really getting my money out of it. A wheel, you'll see it has sort of a concentric circles on it. That kind of helps you when you start, you're going to put your clay on this wheel head, and it helps you kind of get in the middle. Centering is a big part of working on a wheel. My next video, that's what I'm going to start with, is kind of centering and then throw in a basic bowl. I use a batting system. So this is just a regular wood bat. You can see the wheel has some little screw heads that stick up here. These are removable for other things, but if you're using a bat, you'll see your bat has holes in it. You put those screws in, they go on the bat, you throw on the bat, and then you can take this and put it to the side and put another bat on and work on that. Keeps from messing up your wheel head, from things sticking to your wheel head and have to clean it every time. So this is just a single bat. What I use for the stuff that I do is a bat system. So it's this thing here. It's called a Wonder Bat. So again, this thing fits onto the screw heads, and then you have these. And I've got maybe 15 of these things, and so I could throw 15 pots and have them all in these little Wonder Bats. So you just stick that in there, pop it into place. I told you how having a circle helps you center your stuff. Well, I just wet my finger and kind of go like that, and now I know where the center is, so I can take my piece, put it on that, start throwing, and then when I'm done, I can pull this out of here and set it aside. So a bat system, I think they work really great, worth the money. The last tool, and again, when you're doing this, you have some water available to you. You have a little bit of clay mixed with water. You might call this slip. And I have another little bucket that I throw all my trimming parts in. So this is kind of really what you need if you're going to get started with throwing. The last tool that I don't actually own and that I'm actually in the market for right now is a kiln. So I've always put off getting a kiln because I just didn't want to take up the room in my garage, and you got to most of them use like a 220 or like a 30 or 40 amp circuit, so you have to have electrician put some wiring in for you, and they're sort of wherever you put them, they mostly stay in that area. You have to worry about things like ventilation and everything. Well, I've kind of mentally got over that issue and I'm ready to get one. But what I do right now is I throw my pieces, then I have to take them someplace. There's a place within 15-20 minutes of here that I can take my pottery, have them fire it, then I have to bring it back home, and then I glaze it. And then after you glaze it, you have to fire it again. So I'm making a couple trips every time I do a pot. So that's gotten to be kind of a hassle. But if you have someplace convenient and you don't want to put out the money or give up the room, or maybe you don't have a room for something like a kiln, you can still do pottery just using somebody else's kiln facilities. So that's about it for the tools. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. I know this is kind of a tease for the people that know me, that wanted to see me throw something, but that's going to be in the next video. So thanks for watching. Hit like, or as my daughter says, smash that like button. I promised I wouldn't say that. But yeah, subscribe if you're interested in seeing some more pottery videos and other things that I'm going to do. I'm kind of a fix-it guy, and some of the things that I do, and I'm going to make some more videos. So if you subscribe, then you get to see those. So thanks for watching.